This particular recording is regarding student employment, so it was geared towards those who are receiving stipends for their S-LTA role or, if eligible, have chosen to use their federal work-study funds. Now, we know that most people do not sign on for this job because of that it is very lucrative. It's not super high paying, so we want to make sure that you are paid and compensated for your time. And if you follow the instructions here, it should be pretty easy. So let's start about the hiring process and what that looks like particularly. So all of our positions are up on the student employment website and managed through that, as are all other on-campus positions. You do not have to go and find the role and apply. I'm going to manually add you. So if you've never actually worked on campus before in any paid position, you actually need to go to the student employment office to make sure you fill out all the necessary paperwork. And this should include identity verification as well as a direct deposit form. You should do this on or before the first day of class, particularly in the startup of the semester. Even when I manually submit everything, it will take a while because, as you can imagine, there are so many hires. So the earlier you can get this in, the better the chances are that everything will go smoothly. Even if you have had an on-campus position before, if you've have had any changes with your bank account, please follow up with them directly to talk about your direct deposit and make sure the money is going into the correct account. So, as I mentioned, I will manually add everyone in the student employment site so that you don't have to do that. And on your end, you should receive an email confirmation by the end of the second week of classes. I likely won't be able to do this in the first week, but that'll be okay based on the schedule of payment that we're going to talk about. And just so everyone knows, this has come up a few more times in the last year or two, but whether it's work-study funds or stipends, this role is considered taxable income based on Mass and federal laws. And so although you might have $1,000 stipend, unfortunately that does not mean $1,000 end up in your bank account. And so you can refer to the student employment office on what the tax rates are and everything like that. But I don't want that to be a surprise for anyone. Want them to think that you're trying to take all your small stipend money away, but that is just part of the process. So at our first S-LSL meeting, for most of you that'll be on a Wednesday night, and for a small group of you that might be a different day, you're going to receive an official hire letter that's going to confirm the amount as well as instructions for the student employment site. So you can see this little box in the bottom corner. You'll receive something like this. It'll confirm your name, the course, the compensation, whether it's stipend or federal work study, and where that money is coming from, as well as what to log in student employment. So if you're receiving a stipend, we actually break this down into even installments and then hourly rates so that you can be paid throughout the entire semester rather than receiving a single lump sum at the end. We tend to set it at 5 hours, so this is just an example of what it was last year. This also is because we know that people have other roles on campus, and as a student, you're maxed at 20 hours of on-campus work, and so if you have other positions, hopefully this will balance out with those. If you are receiving work study, basically what I will do is set you at an hourly rate, and you will also go through the 7-week installment, but everyone's work study funds are a little bit different, so you can kind of figure out how you want to manage that, and if you have questions, let's talk about it. So I want to give you, based on those installments, give you an example of what the timesheet schedule will look like. So this is an example from last semester, so you'll receive something similar. It'll look a little different, but you can see it lays out the week, the dates of the week, and when your timesheet is due. So you can see timesheet number 1 for this semester was due Sunday, January 21st. Please make sure when you log your timesheet, you do it in that week 2 time date, because when I go in the system and try to manage the 50 or so student employees that we have, it makes it a little bit easier, to be honest, on me to manage all of those and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. For the most week, it ends up being bi-weekly or every other week, but you're going to refer to the schedule that you're going to get at the first S-LSL meeting, or will be posted on Basecamp. Okay, follow this schedule. This is what it's going to look like. This is an example of what it looks like, at least on my end, for someone who has almost successfully completed the semester, um, or maybe they did, but this is the $1,000 stipend and what it looks like broken down into the 7 installments for this particular person. Of course, I took their name off, but for everyone receiving a $1,000 stipend, it looks about the same. Just so you can get a sense of, again, it's almost every other week. If you've never used a student employment system, please talk to your team manager and they will walk you through how to do that. Now, as far as getting your timesheets approved, this is an example, again, the same kind of expectations laid out, and what you need to do in order for me to click the approval box on your timesheet. And I keep a running checklist of where everyone's at so that it's up to date. But you can see we lay out the responsibilities that we talked about in a different module, but weekly meetings, attending class, tracking all these miscellaneous pieces, and then some other things that you might need to submit throughout the semester, whether it's checking in one-on-one with your team manager, and so forth. So again, follow this if you're unclear. It's not necessarily intuitive, but we try to make it as explicit as possible, and we don't like to throw in surprises. So we've done the work of planning it out, and now you need to do the work of planning out what that means for you. Continuing on the timesheet approval process, just to clarify, you are responsible for submitting your own timesheet. I'm going to hire you in the system, but you need to submit your own timesheet. This is for a couple of reasons. One, that would be a lot of work for me to do for, again, 50 plus students. But two, if you are working other roles on campus, I don't know what your hours are, and if you ever submit hours that conflict, both your timesheets get declined and then your payment is delayed. We don't want that to happen. So remember, you are responsible for submitting your timesheets. If for some reason you do not fulfill the outlined expectations or responsibilities that were, for example, outlined on the last slide, this is likely to result in a delayed approval of your student employment timesheet. Okay, so let's say that you did not have your one-on-one check-in with your team manager by the deadline that you knew about was coming. I can't approve your timesheet until that has happened. For the most part, things can be made up. So maybe your timesheet doesn't get approved on time because you forgot to submit something and then you do the next day, then I can go in and improve it once you let me know. However, and I want to be very, very explicit and transparent, I'm not trying to hide anything, and this should be really no surprise, but missing a weekly S-LSL meeting, whether you meet on Wednesday night or you have a different small group because you have an academic conflict, for reasons other than an emergency, which happens, right? Emergencies happen. We're humans. A communicated illness, so if you have the flu, you need to let people know, or some pre-communicated religious observation that you told us about at the beginning of the semester, means you cannot earn your stipend allocation for that week, and you cannot make up those funds, right? So that's pretty high stakes. So that could be 1/7 of your stipend, and we want you to get paid. We've talked about why these S-LSL meetings are really important, so that shouldn't really be a question at that point. But if you miss a meeting, other than one of these reasons, those funds cannot be made up. So if you are work study, I will not approve a timesheet for that week as well. Okay. For work study, even though you're still going to follow the every other week schedule, but you will figure out how you want to log your hours based on that rate. Any questions about this policy, please let me know. We're pretty strict around it. We're really flexible on a lot of things, and we're really flexible when people can communicate with us, but we're pretty big sticklers for this particular policy around the meetings. A couple final thoughts, not to end it on a dreary note, but write it down. Just like you do your assignments from your syllabus from class, write it down in your calendar. If you're not good at remembering things, set reminders in your calendar. Set automatic responses in Google, whatever it is that you use, so that you make sure you get paid in a timely manner and are fulfilling the responsibilities you need to in order for those to be approved. Communicate, right? Communication gets us a lot of different places, and so I encourage you to let myself and your team manager know if there are questions, particularly around timesheets. And if you're unclear, please ask, right? Usually your first go-to person, again, is your team manager, and they'll loop me in if there's something that they can't deal with or that they don't know the answer to. Again, we want to pay you for your work and make sure you earn your full federal work study amount or earn your full stipend. And so hopefully by following the instructions that we provided and using the resources we provide, this should be no problem.